And welcome back to the show, the moment you've all been waiting for, the one I've been waiting for, the rugby discussion. And back with me for the first time this year, Dave Henderson. Welcome back to Monday Night Sport.
Thanks, Tom.
Whole range of rugby things to talk about, and we'll have a look at the action from the Sparta game shortly. I just asked you about Ziggy Seymour. You know Ziggy quite well. He's the new development officer. How do you think that'll work out?
Oh, very well. Mark's doing a diploma at Massey at the moment on business studies and also management. So he, and part of that is rugby side of it. So he'd be great for that job. Mark's a good communicator, and he'll fit in very well. And he's very determined to do well in that area.
And still a recently named player, just off the top level recently. So the kids and the people will have some interaction with him. Yeah,
I don't know how much he's going to have involved with kids, but Mark's knowledge, and he's played over 200 first-class games, and that knowledge is going to do him in good stead for coaching as he goes through, gets to know his job.
Is he retired as a player, or are we going to see him playing for some club or other?
He'll never admit that. You'll probably see him still playing for Woodlands this year.
Woodlands?
Yes.
I'll hold you to that. Okay, we're going to take some action in just a moment from the Spartans Parliamentarians match, which was the first curtain raiser played before the Highlanders a week or so back. You were on the field. Tell us first of all, though, for people who don't follow the Spartans group, what the whole concept of Spartans rugby is all about.
Well, it was set up many years ago. I don't know exactly who set it up, but Lester Rutledge was the guy that got this one started again. He effectively rung around a few guys, and we had a meeting one night and decided that we should start the Spartans up again. Originally, it was set up for ex-Southland players to get involved with rugby and still have that involvement and get that camaraderie going. What we've decided now is that it's just not just for Southland players, ex-Southland players, it's for people that are enthusiastic about rugby, and that's important. Lester wants to use it, and I think it's a good idea to pass knowledge on to young teams. He wants to play some of the high school teams, the Colts teams, the emerging players, and just at different parts of the game stop and just talk to these players and pass on some knowledge, and I think it's a great idea.
Because one thing I noticed, and we'll just start to look at the action now, is New Zealanders never play rugby just for fun, do they? There's always the competitive edge, and there was with this game.
Oh, definitely so.
You might be able to help us identify some of these players, because the interchange bench was working pretty rapidly for both sides.
Yes, Murray Heath there. Murray played a lot of games for Southland halfback.
Now, you're behind on the scoreboard in the first few minutes there, and I think that was a bit of an upset.
Yeah, we were fairly surprised. They had a lot of under-16 players playing for them. They were short, the parliamentary team, and they really climbed into us, and we had to change tactics at half-time. We had to sort of drive it up the middle a bit and then suck them in a bit.
Is that 21?
Shane Enright. Actually, as you're talking, the competitiveness, the likes of Paul Laidlaw, those sort of guys out there, you think they're still playing today. Brent McKenzie, Paul Cosgrove, I think is number 1. Sean Flynn, number 8, as usual, standing at the back line.
It's in there, on the burst and straight through.
Should be that try time, I think. Yeah, I was quite surprised in those rucks and mauls. They're fairly dark and they're fairly competitive, I tell you that. Good fun though, everybody enjoyed it. They thought it was quite constructive for a golden oldies sort of match, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we've got another game at Central Pirates towards the end of this month against a team from Dunedin.
You might be able to name the try scorer.
Yes.
Yes, it was a lot less frivolous, if I can use that word, than I expected. It was really no joking around. The people out there played rugby and played to win.
They did, and as you saw in the paper on the Monday morning, Eric Roy sort of suffered the consequences for coming offside, and I don't think that was the case. But
wonderful shiner. Yeah, it was magnificent. So, how did the two respective politicians fare from your eyes as the rugby expert, Mark Peck and Eric Roy? Honestly.
Well, Eric Roy, every ruck that I was sort of standing beside, he was offside. He was getting right involved. I ended up on a plane with Mark Peck, I think it was on the Tuesday, heading through to Wellington, and he was telling me that he's not quite up to that sort of standard, so he stood out a few, but you never saw much of Mark Peck. It would have been nice to get him in the bottom of the ruck, I think.
You never see much Mark Peck, do you, at that height? It's sort of hard to put yourself about the rugby field. But it's good that they stuck in and joined in the festivities for the day. And how would the play? It was quite a hot day down there, and
yeah, it was, and it was played in 2 30-minute spells. We had, there was quite a strong wind blowing down the ground, and there was always plenty of opportunities to get your breath back. 2 Wiley played first 5 of the Parliamentarians. 2 played a lot of games for Wellington. still very competitive. He apologised afterwards for his competitiveness out on the paddock. He got a bit upset at times.
I think the top players just expect that though.
Zani O'Donnell, he just took the ball in as the first one he caught all day, so he's very happy with himself. There's Tuwali there, just showing his skills. First 5 for Wellington many years ago.
That running style was very unique for Tuwali.
Yes, very low to the ground.
He's got shocking eyesight, so I think he plays in context, doesn't he?
Nice.
He's got very, very bad eyesight, remember that being a feature.
Shane Enright scores a try there. Very enjoyable day.
Yep, crowd sort of got in behind it too, didn't you think?
Yeah, it was very early, considering that the main game was until 6:35, and we're all go at 4 o'clock.
Probably the earliest you've played on Homestead Stadium for a few years.
Well, it is, and it was just nice to get back out there. The ground's in beautiful condition.
It is, isn't it? Because
Yes.
we did a little feature as a build-up to the game about the improvements they've made, and after I've walked across it many times last year, it's a different field, isn't it?
Oh, totally different, yes.
Yeah. A few years too late for you.
Yes, but never mind, you've got to retire.
Any chance you're turning out for Blues this year at all?
No, I don't think so. I think we've got a bit of depth there in the loose forwards this year.
Right.
Even though I'd like to, it's time to. These young guys are probably too good for me now anyway, so hopefully so.
So, but it's the big Jubilee year as well for Blues, isn't it, this year, which we haven't done a feature on Blues yet, but we will do. You're going to be part of those celebrations?
Yes, I'm back coaching the team this year, and Tom, Danny and myself are coaching, and we've done a bit of homework and looked at the areas we needed to strengthen up, and hopefully we can achieve that. And saying that, we've got a very young team. I think the average age is about 21 or 22, and there's we're not expecting too greater things this year, but we hope to be thereabouts towards the end anyway, close to the top 4.
Nice to finish off your Jubilee year with a good performance.
Oh, would be, and we'll be installing that in the players that it's the key focus for the year to do well.
Okay, Dave's not going anywhere though, because in a minute we're going to have a look at the Southland 15 against the Highlanders. And welcome back to Monday Night Sport, part 2 of our rugby discussion. We're now looking at the Southland 15 versus the Highlanders Colts game. Now, Dave, what was to be achieved from this game from a Southland point of view, given the differences in the seasons?
Oh, I don't think there's anything to be achieved there. I guess it was just an opportunity for the players that are going to be available for Southland later on the year to have that opportunity to get out there on the paddock and just see where their progress is at this time of year.
The Colts, the first year they've got a concept of a Highlanders Colts competition. Do you like that concept for the younger players?
Very much so, for Southland and Otago, but I'm just a wee bit wary that it doesn't end up that we start losing our top players to Otago for that rugby, and losing them for beyond that into the Otago set up for the NPC.
Because it's really a network to stop that from happening, but players may feel they've got a better chance of being in Dunedin than they have in being in Invercargill. That's what you're suggesting, perhaps? Yeah,
and also the travelling from Invercargill to Dunedin. Also, there's no structure in place like the Highlander A team. That the money situation, these guys are having to leave their jobs to go and play in Dunedin, and there's not much return on that either. So effectively, they could end up going to Dunedin for work. So.
Okay, as we start to look at the footage for that game, tell us when you sat down at the ground whether you expected Southland to have beaten this team. Would you have expected that from the teams on the paper?
My thoughts were that the Southland team should have put a good showing in front, against these Otago Highlander Colts. I didn't expect them to win the game due to the fact that the Highlander Colts had their season now versus Southland later on in August. But I was probably a bit disappointed in the skill level and the strength level of the Southland team was out there on Saturday.
This would be the earliest the rep team would even get together, isn't it? Sort of traditionally.
It is, and it's hard work. It's hard work out there. These Colts are prime, ready to go, and it still amazes me that the skill level here with the Otago Highlander Colts was probably above what we're at this time of year, and that's a factor that goes back to guys training before the season starts, and even years ago when they leave school. These guys are not getting the physical coaching and the standards that have to be met to get to a level that they can compete.
The motivational level for the Highlanders would be fairly high, wouldn't it? The Highlander Colts, they had a lot to play for in this game. It was positions in the team and with an important competition around the corner.
Oh, definitely, and this is a trial match for them, and there were some Southland players in there too, and they had something to prove back to Bob Telfer, and they'd have everything to play for, and and as you probably saw as the game went on, the Southland team got worse, and that's probably due to lack of fitness and that mental state of mind to play in a competition game.
Is it a worrying sign that these Otago Highlanders, or the Highlanders Colts to be correct, went and got beaten by 20 points by the Auckland Colts? Does that concern you?
It is worrying because it just shows that the level that we have to get to in Southland, and there's a lot of work having to be done, and you can put training programs in front of these guys, but if they're not going to go and do this training, remember that they're not professional rugby players, that there's only so much you can do.
Mm. It is up to the individual. There's only so much Rugby Southland or any other body can do, isn't it? If the player doesn't want to get to that level, they're going to find themselves out. Something else to fill the gap.
That's dead right, and I think it goes back to when these guys leave school, where they've got to be, the mental side of the game. They've got to be shown, put some carrots in front of them to show them what they need, what they can achieve if they get to this level, and also the physical side of the game. They need to be shown the right training to be able to get to that skill level and that strength level that's required.
Given the programs, do you think there's a call for perhaps Southland to have more games like this scattered through rather than have just a couple of games before the NPC starts, to start them playing regularly throughout the pre-season?
It's probably pretty difficult with the structure of the season, with the Highlanders out of the team, and I guess not knowing what Bob Telfer's got in mind, there's probably still more imports to come in. So effectively, you're probably not getting the whole team. We don't know how many players in this game here that are going to be playing for Southland later on the year, depending on what Bob has in line to come into the team.
And the other thing we've got to do is avoid the clash with club rugby, which we're trying to do at a national level, so that these players that you see here can play a full club season.
Yeah, it's important that they spend a bit of time in their club, but still remembering that we're all judged on how the Southland team goes, and I've got no qualms of being a club coach that if the Southland players are required for a game or for training, that they should be let to go and train with the team.
They had some semblance. There were good patches in the game, I felt, for them. They got some continuity later in the match, but just perhaps the Highlanders played. I don't know how much preparation they'd had, how many games they'd played beforehand, but they looked to be pretty well set.
Yeah, they did, and it's. The big difference is the conditioning and that mental preparation. Like you said, it's like a test match for these young Colts players, because their big game was against Auckland this week, and they had to prove themselves. But it's a size factor too. These guys are only Colts compared to the Southland team, and we didn't look any bigger than the Otago Highlander Colts.
You're not the only person. A couple of people in the crowd said to me they thought the Highlanders looked a lot more mature than under 21.
Yeah. But bearing in mind the class of this Otago Highlanders Colts too, that's just about a New Zealand Colts front row out there, and some of those players are very classy. Some of them, within the next 2 years will be in that Otago team and also the Highlanders team.
And it's not difficult to imagine that the Auckland Colts, probably dominated by the Pacific Island under 21s, who tend to physically mature. Let's be honest, the big guys, aren't they? And they don't lack size at all.
Oh, definitely, and it's one thing Auckland don't lack is ability at that age group level, and just having the opportunity to watch a Colts game up there, and even their B team, there's a bit of class available to them. They are losing players at the top level now because they're wanting to make money and spread around the unions, but their age group rugby is very good at the moment.
It's interesting, Jed Rowlands was saying he was concerned about the lack of depth in the Auckland Super 12 squad, because he's just lost Ronnie Clark for the season, but I think if he doesn't have to look too far to find quite a good crop of young players. Rick O'Gear's not even playing football at this stage, and he's got tremendous pace, so I don't think he need be quite as concerned as other places.
No, I think my feeling is they'll probably bring Mark Ellison to the midfield. I don't think, just looking at the way Mark was playing now, that he's that strong to be. You have to be quite a big guy in the midfield now, but he'll be adequate in there, and just bring Rick O'Gear or someone like that on the wing.
Yeah, that is a very timely interest to talk about the Super 12 competition. Highly controversial. A lot of calls talk back today about the refereeing interpretations. I mentioned before, I think there were 6 different interpretations of how tackle ball. Or do you think that impacted on the quality of football we saw?
Oh, it did, very much so. And it annoys me at the beginning of every Super 12 that the referees are told to stamp the new rules on the game and let's start from the beginning, and it spoils the rugby. It's to me, the players are confused, they're annoyed, and they're making mistakes because it's the first game of the season, and it doesn't help when referees are blowing them up for every second thing they do.
What is the reason that we're getting a lot less tries in Super 12 than when the competition first started? Is it the refereeing? Is it the defensive patterns have changed? We're just getting a lot less tries than we used to.
Well, I think it's just the evolution of the Super 12. You know, these teams have been around for 3 or 4 years now, and everybody's worked out the strengths and weaknesses of most of these teams. The personnel, other than the South Africans, really hasn't changed a hell of a lot. And physically they're a lot stronger, and and the defensive patterns. A lot of teams now are working more on the defensive patterns, what they are, and the attacking drills. And it came out on Friday night and on Saturday that there wasn't much room to move out there.
I suppose Canterbury Crusaders were renowned for having one of the best defensive units last year, and it won. So people are saying, well, that's obviously the way you win, is by shutting down the opposition and picking up enough points to make the difference.
Yeah, that's true. And these days they're working on a lot of combination tackles, driving the players back in the tackles. But it comes to a stage, even on Friday night and Saturday night, I think the referees weren't picking up a lot of offside play, creeping over the advantage line and not creating a lot of space for backlines to move. But it's definitely every team's taken their hat off to Canterbury, and they've worked on their defensive qualities.
Okay, let's be specific. Your thoughts on the Highlanders, sort of points out of 10 for their performance first up?
Yeah, I thought they were a bit rusty. Very tough game. I was very surprised with the Auckland team. Physically they took the Otago team on, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was the hardest battle that Otago will have for most of this competition. I thought at times they could have spun the ball wide. I was probably a bit disappointed in their first 5, second 5 and centre combinations, where they had opportunities and they decided to cut back. And saying that, the defence was strong too, but there was opportunities later on in the game to move. But yeah, hey, they showed a bit of class. They dug deep, and they showed the strength they have got, which is in their forwards, and they just carried on and got on top of Auckland by the end of the game.
It's too early to say, obviously, to make any predictions at this point, but you get the feeling after just one round that we're in the situation where Auckland, Canterbury and the Highlanders are the top 3 New Zealand teams, and the Chiefs and the Hurricanes are going to struggle to win enough games to really be competitive top 4.
Yeah, that was, we all knew that the Hurricanes were going to struggle. They could surprise a few. The Chiefs, very, very disappointing, and even though their forwards aren't doing very well, and that's the key to winning a game. If your tight 5 aren't working, you're never going to win a game. But even their backs, the tackling of some of their backs was left to be desired on Saturday night. And if their aspirations for being All Blacks, I think some of them are got the paintbrush through their names now.
There is a couple of good arguments, I suppose. The Chiefs and the Hurricanes come from diverse regions, whereas Canterbury, Auckland, Otago basically play together for the rest of the season. Do you think that's a major force behind the difference in the sides?
Oh, very much so. They've been able to build that base up over 12 months. They're together for 12 months, and they bring a couple of odd players in there. But definitely so. And I don't think you're going to see much changes over the next 2 to 3 years. The Chiefs and the Hurricanes will always struggle.
Okay, we're going to have a look at this week's games, and based on what we've seen so far, and pick out a few winners for you. Somebody rang up last week and said we forgot to do that. Didn't have a guest in the studio this week, but no excuses. We'll start with the Blues and Crusaders. This is a night game. Well, it's programmed as a night game, and you would have noticed that one of those other games changed without much notice. But Auckland hosting Canterbury, and Canterbury would be favourites on the tote. What about with Dave Henderson?
Yeah, it's always a toughie, but I'd have to go with the Crusaders due to their form last year in the NPC, the way they dealt to Auckland up there, and mentally they're in a state that they've won their first game and they've got no problems in winning on Eden Park, so I'd take the Crusaders there. They
have got over that hurdle, and Crusaders just for me, because I think the Blues are going to be, people have written them off, and they're far from that. They're certainly better than some of the other teams I saw on the weekend. The Brumbies gave away far too many penalties and lost a chance to beat the Cats. The Sharks are a step better than that.
They are, and each year we find the South African teams are slow to start, but the Sharks had a draw in the weekend, and they'll be really going out to win this one, and I'll pick the Sharks by a reasonable score.
Okay, now the Chiefs, they were shocking. Reds, they were also very poor. They got away with 11-0. They've got a lot of players out and weren't impressive at all. Hamilton going to help out the Chiefs?
Well, if they're going to win one, it's got to be this one, and and I didn't have a good look at the Reds scrum, but that's what they'll be concentrating on with the Chiefs. But you just about have to go for the Chiefs for this one. They've got to pull something out of the bag to save a season that could look like misery by the end of it.
Cats Waratahs. Now the Waratahs and the Brumbies have not won a game in South Africa yet. Waratahs got very close, missed a lot of kicks, could have easily have won that game yesterday. The Cats are beatable.
Cats are beatable, but they've had a few personnel changes this year. The South African base of players, their nucleus of their top players have been spread out a bit this year, and I'm picking the Cats might be a team that can upset a few, so I'd take the Cats.
There's a team that people talked about for a few years and just haven't fired, and this year might be it for you. Yeah. Highlanders, Northern Bulls. The Highlanders we talked about, the Bulls really struggled. I felt they struggled, and I can't see them beating the Highlanders.
No, I can't either, especially in Invercargill. They'll have a good crowd support down here, and the Highlanders are just building. They'll take a while to settle in, but their forward pack will be too strong.
Don't look for good odds on the TAB day, because I think the Highlanders are paying about $1.10. Now, Hurricanes, I thought they were the worst team out of all 12 that I saw on the weekend, and the Stormers were one of the best. And that's a team that's not been rated highly in the past, but they at least tried to be expensive.
Yeah, they, out of all the teams, their back play was probably better than most teams in the weekend. The Hurricanes, I didn't see much of that game, but I've got faith in the Hurricanes that they'll win one game or two games this year, and if they're going to do it, it's going to be at home. So, long shot, but I'll take the Hurricanes. Hurricanes
seem to be affected by a couple of things. One on a good point, I must say, Devon Heaps, I thought had a very good game. I know you didn't see much of that game in a losing pack and a losing team, but players like Tanu are just a different player when he's not playing behind an Auckland pack. When you're playing behind a disintegrated one, it's a much harder job at halfback.
Oh, definitely so, and we've said that about some of the players that have made All Blacks from Auckland. The Mark Carters of this world that played. You could be on the side of the scrum for Auckland, Tom, and end up with an All Black jersey years ago when that Auckland team was strong. Junior Tanui's another one. He's just very ordinary when he's not behind that pack.
They miss John Preston, the thinker in the team. I always thought he was the one that, when things weren't going right, changed the game plan, had a little bit of influence either in the backs or on the forwards in controlling the game, but without him they seemed to be just running. Even Christian Cullen, he kicked the ball the first 4 times he got the ball. It's just such a rarity.
Yeah, it's John Preston he was the general in that team, and obviously he was the captain of their NPC team, and he's got a lot of experience there, and I think he just settled them down. There is a lot of misspent youth with a lot of those players out on that team, and they need somebody that's in control there, and he was the man to do it. They will miss him.
If you're picking an All Black team tomorrow, I've got to talk about one position, centre. Much talked about. Clark's out now, so he's out of contention. What would your personal choice be? Not who you thought Hart would pick, but who you think is showing the light at the moment?
Well, to me, that's probably the hardest pick of the whole All Black team. That and second 5, and to me at the moment, there's no one that really stands out. I guess they're grooming the Jeremy Stanleys of this world. They're looking at him. I don't know.
What did you think of Stanley's game? Very good defensively, made a lot of king hits. What about the rest of the game?
Yeah, I still think he lacks a bit of distribution skills. I don't know if that'll come in, because obviously him and Peter Alatini and Tony Brown haven't been together for, they're only getting to know each other's play, and that might come. Definitely missing John Leslie in that back line. But yeah, his distribution skills, I think he needs to, he's very good defensively, but he's got to have a bit more vision out there at centre.
So there's certainly no hot favourite even at this stage. Possibly Clark was the favourite, but with him off the scene now, it's up to those guys to prove themselves.
It is, and they've got some issues there with. Obviously, they're looking at Craig Innes for second 5. Mark Mayhoffler that I don't think really showed out last year. Daryl Gibson is another one to me that could either play second 5 or centre. I think he needs to be there. He's got a lot of skill. He's strong. And he's very quick off the mark. We need somebody there that's going to be a game breaker in the middle there.
Christian Cullen as centre, how do you like that idea?
I think you might as well put me at centre if you're going to put Christian Cullen there. I watched him play for Northland, I think it was last year, playing against North Auckland, and basically he looked out of his depth at centre. He needs that time. Even coming in at fullback, he doesn't show a lot of skill at times at passing that. You've got to have that vision and those skills at centre, or you're lost.
I hardly recall him ever passing the ball in his entire life. He's a fantastic fullback because of his running skills. But to even think about centre, that has me worried from an All Black camp, and it's only March the 1st. So there we go. Dave Henderson, thank you very much for joining me on this rugby roundup, and we'll catch up with you later in the season.
Thank you, Tom.
Right, the Waikiwi Rugby Club go in search of their history right after the break. Suicide Joe, you hear that? Huh? Well, what are we talking about next? I've lost my sheet.